So excited to kick off another session of our pre-symposium panels. We are here to talk about how to find new ways to grow. So both growing our business as well as growing our people when we do make pivots, iterations, and growth within our business. This could be reorgs, this can be going through mergers and acquisitions, this could be identifying a new business opportunity, it could be a variety of different things. As we grow our businesses, one, how do we keep ourselves open to identifying those new business opportunities? But two, how do we grow our people to adapt to the changes that invariably happen when we do make pivots? So we've got three great guests with us here today. They're also going to be at our executive symposium on December 7th on this topic. So if you're watching this and you're thinking, man, I'd love to meet these three great guys, come to the symposium. I'll post the info in the comment section on how to RSVP. My name is Garrett Mintz. I am the founder of Ambition in Motion. Whoops, my video is off. That's weird. My name is Garrett Mintz. I'm the founder of Ambition in Motion. At Ambition in Motion, our vision is a world where the vast majority of people are excited to go to work. When they are there, their expectations meet reality. And when they come home, they feel fulfilled. We believe that starts with leaders. We believe leaders create the experiences employees have while at work. And so we create technologies and communities to empower leaders to be their best selves for their teams. So one of the ways we build that community is through our executive symposiums. We recognize that sometimes being in a leadership role can be a lonely place. And so having other leaders that can commiserate with our challenges, can relate to what we're going through, even if they don't have the solutions, but at least they can say, I've been there before. It can be really helpful as we work through those challenges. But I'd love for my three guests to introduce themselves before we dive into the panel. Tim, do you mind going first?
Sure, Tim Fox, Impulop Global, the CTO for this organization where we do consulting in starting at the database level and up from that point out to applications, cloud, et cetera. We don't work in a particular vertical. Pretty much anyone who has a database shows up as a customer for us.
Very cool. Cody, how about yourself? Oh, Cody, you're muted.
I apologize. So I'm Cody Rosier. I'm the founder and CEO of Zalamo Corporation. We're one of the largest safety consulting firms in the U.S., one of the largest abroad, and we just look forward to helping people day to day and finding people with challenges and give them cool ways to get through it.
Very nice. And then Don, how about yourself?
So Don Hartman, I work for what I like to call a small big four. I call it Aspire Systems, a global 5,000 person delivery firm with U.S. offices not too far from Tim in Irving. And we do pretty much everything a big four can do, but we're small, nimble, and hungry.
Very nice. Cool. Well, let's dive in, y'all. Topic for today, how to find new ways to grow. So I'd love to start with the initial business identification process. So we become successful because we found a niche in the market, but then economics change. Maybe market changes. Maybe we identify a new opportunity. How do we go from distinguishing, is this a wild hair or is this actually something, there's some meat on the bone here? How do you go about identifying when there are new potential opportunities for the business to grow and the business develop within your organization? So I'd be curious to learn, has your business ever made any pivots or made any identifications of new business models to pursue? How did you go about identifying that? And have you ever had positions where you tried something and it didn't work out? And how did you determine when to cut bait?
I think that's the norm.
Tell me about it, Cody.
Well, trying things and not working. One of the things that if you go back 50 years, companies, they found a spot, they honed in on that spot, they got really good and they stayed there. The technology didn't move as fast as it does today. You didn't have businesses starting and failing and all the different things. A guy would get a job at 18 years old and retire there with pension, and those things are gone. They don't exist anymore. You might find an oddity, but it's not the norm. And a lot of times what I see is, and I'm big in acquisition. I love to buy small companies. That's my probably favorite thing to do. And you see these guys in their mid 40s, mid 50s, and they don't know what to do. They don't know how to grow. And a lot of times you see them going under or struggling because they're not willing to try new things, random stuff just to see how it goes. And fear, I feel like today, especially coming out of COVID, and I know everybody hates to talk about COVID, but there's so much value in understanding what happened in business and why so many companies failed and why there's so much new competition out there. Same people, new names. And so if you're not trying new stuff, your chances of success are less, but your chances of real, I mean, just expansion. We had one year, I think it was 2021, into Q2, 21 to into Q2 and 22, we grew 568%.
Wow.
And I'm not that smart. So, understanding how to get through that and the things that we were trying, things we were saying yes to coming out of, some of the COVID challenges, if you're not willing to fail, your growth is going to be impeded by that.
I completely agree with that. Cody's in a little bit of a different business kind of a market than we are. So we're in the technology business where it changes almost on an hour basis. There's a new tool coming out. There's a new methodology. You gotta watch the market. You gotta see what's sticking. We started with something that stuck for a long, long time, and database for enterprise class companies, on-prem, very large monolithic footprints. That's changing now to more of a cloud focus, breaking things apart, microservices, reusability. Now, the things that we grew up with and the things that we knew are not the same exactly as they are today, but all the technology and the skill sets and the things that we work on and we work with are very similar. Now, in our case, we built a technology lab where we can sort of replicate just about anything that our customer base has. And so we have to invest. So if we're not in that space where one of our customers is, one of our big customers, and we look at the market, we see that, 15 of the top 20 of our customers are going that direction. We have to invest some time in it. One of the things that we note as well is that our customers are not experts in technology most often. So they're not cloud experts because cloud experts have only been around for a few years. They're experts in moving things, manufacturing things, financial transactions. They're not experts in cloud networking. So we have to fill those gaps, and we have to identify when those gaps appear. And, Garrett, as you mentioned, you don't always guess right. But if you don't guess, you're going to be left behind.
I'd be curious to learn, Don, from your perspective, and Cody and Tim, I want to learn your thoughts on this too, but how do you know, rather, what is your innovation process? Is it like one person who drives the innovation? They say, we're going in this direction, we're giving this a try, we're going to see how this goes, or is it a group effort? Like, how do you go about identifying this? Like, I'll give a perfect example. One of our leaders in our mastermind groups, she is at a real estate software company. And the recent legislation where I think it was Missouri, where they said, hey, you don't need to have an agent anymore to buy and sell your house. You can just buy and sell it directly to people. It's a huge opportunity. It seems like that's a big legislation that could become a nationwide thing. I don't really know how the legislation works. But the innovation process around that is not fully being bought in by everybody on our team. Everyone's like, oh, do we invest in it? I don't really know. And it seems like, green flashing lights, like, yes, you absolutely should give it a try. But for you all, how do you guys go about identifying when is the right time to try something new? Is it when something's not currently working or maybe taking a dip, or when you see something out there in the market that you think you could leverage with your own capabilities? How does that process work for you, Don?
Yeah, so for me, I'll build on what Tim said. When many of my customers are going a certain direction, it's important to listen. And the first of the 7 habits is seek first to understand. What are my customers' challenges? I need to be an expert in his or her industry. And I got a quick case study that was a blockbuster in growth. Could I share that?
Yeah, please.
So we had a heavy equipment manufacturer whose the things that they sold and rented were huge. They weren't GPS enabled, so the customer had no idea where these big monstrosities were. But we started with the CFO, and his problem was revenue leakage. They were still doing paper timesheets, and it was a union shop. he thought he was losing up to 25% of his revenue. So we said, hey, why don't we start by putting GPS enablement on all these big things that you do? Then we can figure out where they are. They didn't have a ton of money, so we rolled out a 3-year digital transformation plan that mapped what they could spend with the most important capabilities. But the end result of all that is they ended up opening an entirely new digital revenue stream that they didn't have before, because they could see the gaps in utilization for these big machines, and they opened up a subleasing revenue stream. So we started solving a small problem that became a much, much bigger problem, and then a revenue enhancement hit it out of the park transformation.
That's sweet. That's a good story. I like that story. That's interesting. So, I mean, I guess in that case, it was they identified a problem that they thought they were losing revenue or just driving, having major operating expenditures that were unclear. But have y'all ever seen it from the, hey, we see an opportunity in the market, kind of what Cody was talking about earlier, is when like the pandemic hit, a lot of people froze and didn't know what to do. And there were probably some people at those companies who were like, we need to go in this way. And their company went down, but they're like, I'm going to open up my own shingle and start my own business because we clearly needed to pivot in this direction. We weren't nimble enough to do that. How do you, what's the process for identifying new opportunities in utilizing the capabilities you already have, but for something new? Have y'all gone through that before? How do you go about identifying that?
Go ahead.
Yeah, we absolutely do that. And I sort of try to nudge the direction. I don't like to be the only guy making the decisions because we all have adults working for us. I try to give as much responsibility as I can in little chunks to people so they have some ownership of it. But what we try to do is if we have a particular technology focus, and we're a little smaller company than Don's, we have a particular technology focus, you can't do a 180. You got to do a 45 or a 90. So it's still got to be kind of within your wheelhouse, or you're going to go buy a company and you're going to go buy that technology. You're going to go buy that skill set. So we definitely have to pivot at a lower angle, maybe than some of the others. But we definitely do that. We'll have to say, if everybody was just managing data sets today, now, tomorrow, everybody wants to do machine learning and AI. Well, that's all within the database. That's all within the same kind of ecosystem that we very often deal with. That was an easy pivot. Going to Kubernetes and microservices and, breaking applications up and hybrid cloud. Those are things that are maybe more of a stretch for certain companies. So we definitely try to pivot within our wheelhouse, and you still make some guesses that may not be, it may be a little too far out, or that you see in the market maybe something's happening that is a little more of a flash. And I would tell you that if you guys remember the term Hadoop, Hadoop was a big flash and kind of seemed like it was going to be the next big thing, and we don't really see that as much anymore. So we turned that way and we turned back. So
Tim, you bring up this really interesting point about 45-degree or 90-degree changes, no 180-degree changes. This is really a question for, Cody, and we can open it up to everybody else, but I want to start with you, Cody, because you mentioned that you love to acquire businesses. So often I see bad acquisitions. You see bad acquisitions happen all the time where you think, oh my gosh, this company has got this business over here. We'll acquire them. And then every one of their customers will want to buy all of our products too, because naturally we'll all be under the same umbrella. And
that's not true.
That's not true.
That's not real.
Yeah, well, exactly.
People like to think that, but that's not real.
Yeah. Exactly. I see it all the time. So tell me, Cody, about your stories of how do we go about making 45-degree M&A, or rather, really, tell me about your M&A experiences. What's worked well for you? What's not worked well for you? I would imagine it's closer to Tim's, like, hey, they do this. They're similar. They're 45-degree off from us, but they're still, for the most part, within our wheelhouse, not a total 180-degree flip. Like, how do you go about, what have you found?
And it goes back into the last thing that you asked about the innovation process, and I'll speak into that. So one of the things that a guy from Berkshire told me a couple of years ago, there are several large private equity firms that we work with, and they all kind of said the same thing to me, but this one was the more profound. He said, Cody, I need you in the next 2 years to be able to say yes to everything and grow over 200% overnight. You got to figure out how to do that. Well, that's impossible. No, it's not. Figure it out. I need you to figure it out because I'm coming to you. Just know. And this was coming out of COVID. And this was the part about COVID that I want everybody to understand. You know, when COVID happened, companies just shut down. You had 3 phases that happened. And a lot of people don't realize this, but the first phase was people just shut down, went out of business. Everybody else shut down and just sucked up all the capital they had, the liquidity that they had sitting around. And every industry of the, I think, 15 recognized industries, they all sucked all their capital out. They did the best they could to grow and just get through it. And then when everybody ran everything to failure, you couldn't get parts, you couldn't get anything, you couldn't. So the infrastructure was just crumbling fast. There was no, and because we live in the world of the JIT system, just in time, nobody had anything. Nobody had any inventory. Nobody had squat. So when things broke loose, they said, okay, we got to start repairing things. We got to go back to work now. Well, then you had 2 companies left, the ones that did everything they could to stay in the game. Well, now all this work hit at one time. They couldn't afford to go to work and didn't even realize it. And so the companies that were the hiring clients moved so fast and said, okay, cool, you can't help me. I'm going here. Well, there was, on the heel of having, you know, when you're looking at the valuation of a company, you look at the average of the 3 years. When you're looking at some of this stuff, now you have these incredible buying opportunities, owners that are willing to sell for pennies on the dollar. And I'm looking at this while I'm being told by these private equity firms, hey, Cody, you got to say yes to everything I bring you. And I need you to be able to grow 200% overnight like that anywhere I tell you to go. And so what we said is I went to the team and go back to the innovation process. Find someone who needs help with a servant's heart, and that's it, and say yes. And we changed our message, and our message was this. Every client we had at the time and everybody that was coming, our message was very specific. There's 3 parts of our organization. I either own the company that's servicing you, I have invested in the company that is servicing you, or we have partnered with them, vetted them out, and I plan to buy them over time. And so everybody knew that you had all these different names of organizations coming with us, and I either owned them, and it's still this way today. I either own the company, I've partnered with the company, so I own a stake in it. I have part ownership, so if things are going south, I can jump in and fix them. Or we're their largest client. We're vetting out to, we're subbing out to them, and we're in control. And then the way that I did it was, we had an opportunity to come up in New Jersey. We didn't have an office in New Jersey. We didn't have anybody in New Jersey. So in order to make that work, I had to outsource it locally. So I did. And I went to a smaller firm, one under $5 million. Because most of your private equity firms, they don't want anything under $5 million. So I went to one of the smaller firms up there. I said, hey, this is what I need. Can you do it? Yes. All right. How do you operate? We operate under godly principles. We're a very faith-based organization to an extreme. How does this work? And so we had aligned values of trust. We're going to say no if it's not right. This is how we operate. So we said, cool, let's do it. So we did it. Well, that gave me an office and an opportunity to work in New Jersey that I didn't have before. And so I'm making money. It's already got built-in infrastructure. Everything's working. They have their client base. It's done. And when I hit roughly 60% of their total volume, and I was 60% of their business, I just simply flew up there, sat down with the owner, said, look, you got 2 options. Sell me your company for 40% of its worth right now, or I take 60% of your business and walk out the door. It's your call. And they said, well, that doesn't make sense. Well, why would I do that? And so I laid out what that benefit package looked like and how I wanted them to stay. Keep your name. I don't want anybody to know who we own. It's just part of the portfolio. You keep doing what you're doing, you're going to make more money. We have shared resources, this kind of, and everybody I've done that to 56 times now, they've all said, yes, that's a great idea. And so now we keep growing these offices, but they're self-sustaining. They were sustaining before we got there. And so when you look at the innovation process, now it's turned into, we bought a building maintenance company. Well, how does that operate into safety? A client had a need. I said, hey, man, we can help you. If you need support, I don't know anything about it, but I do have a client that does it because our safety thing, we had a client that did it. I said, look, I can pair y'all together. We only work with companies that we like, even on our client base. If it doesn't line up with our values, we're not going to work with them. And so I did that and wound up acquiring the company. Then I went to same thing for piping, wound up buying a piping company. I'm looking at buying a tray company right now that does internals for trays. And we just, so that innovation piece, we just keep finding ways to say yes, finding one of those three. I either own it, I've invested in it, or we're partnering with them. We vetted them out and we trust them. I would say all of our clients love us because of our values. And I know that's a future question, but when you talk about the innovation process externally, that's our external innovation process.
No, that's cool. I like it. It's fascinating.
Internally, the key is, and I'll keep this one short, my team, if you can bring me a new way to do something that's bigger, better, faster, how can we do twice the work with half the resources? If you can bring me that, it is very your pocketbook will know how much I appreciate it. And those are the things that we do on internal innovation. I don't care who you are. I don't care if your only job is to fill printer paper and make sure the fridge has water in it. If you can find me a way to get the water faster, cheaper, and like Kroger does HEB does office delivery now. Well, they say, hey, I don't have to go get it anymore. Cool. Well, it was costing me X. I can save by you not going to get it. So that for the next 6 months is worth this to me. Compensate them well. It was worth it.
That's interesting. That's Tim, Don, in your experiences working internally with organizations, Cody, that use case right there of I think some companies fall into one of two categories. I think you get some companies that are just say, hey, I'm paying you to do this work. My expectation is that you're going to be innovative. I'm not going to pay you any more to be any more innovative. So just keep being innovative. And I think that's probably a bad call at the long run because you're really not incentivizing any additional actions. Like financially, there is no incentive to be innovative. You think, oh, you're going to be optimally innovative because I'm paying you your salary. It's like, well, hold on a second. People are motivated by compensation in some form or another. And if you show people love for doing things that are innovative, they will keep innovating. But if you don't,
well, you also have two types of people. You have employers and employees.
Sure.
And if you find the people with the mindset that are hungry and they're drivers, it actually doesn't even have anything to do with the compensation. They want to go out. They want to do. They want to knock home runs all the time at any given level. I mean, they just want to kill it. And they appreciate the compensation. And naturally, they love it and they want it. But when you find the employer mentality, but they just don't want to be an employer, those are the keys. Because if you have, and what you were saying, Garrett, if you got an employee mentality, you turn your job off at 5 o'clock.
Mm-hmm.
If you have an employee mentality, he asked me to put paper in the printer. I did it. I'm going to sit here until I get something else. And that's not what it takes. And so when you have these people that you're constantly, hey man, that's a great job. And then also understanding the language, the love languages. It's called predictive index. There are some things when you're hiring these people that it's extremely important to understand their love language and be natural in your setting. Don't be fake. I am a toucher. I like physical affection. I would rather my dad give me a pat on the back than a $10 an hour raise. That's me. Well, because I know that about me, I'm going to shake hand. I'm going to give the bro hug. I'm going to, hey, great job. I'm not going to go out of my way to go buy you a bag of peanut M&Ms. I'm not going to do that. And so I need to make sure that my team is full of people that receive love and appreciation the way in which I give it naturally.
I got to say, listening to Cody talk is really interesting to me because we sit around here, we go, what do people do if they're not in technology? I mean, what kind of jobs are there, right? And what I try to do is give people an ownership mentality. So if they feel like they own the process or they own the project, they're going to be a whole lot more careful about what they do versus having that employee mentality where a lot of people would love a checklist. Give me that checklist. I'll get those 5 things done and then I'll shut down. But if you give people the ownership and say, what do you think? How do you think this ought to go? What's the better way to do it than the way we've been doing it? It changes the dynamic completely and immediately. and then you get a whole lot more input. And because, as I said earlier, I don't want to be one leader. There's too much going on for one person in all of our businesses. So you got to have other people that are willing to take on some of that responsibility and take on some of that ownership of what it is that they're doing. And again, I agree with you. I agree with both you guys. People like to get a little bit of extra cash. They also like to feel like what they're doing is worth something, right? They've made a change. They've made a positive, bigger, better, faster. I got a guy that says that all the time, or better, faster, cheaper in our business, right? I mean, that's kind of the way it's got to go. So I like to hear these other, piping and safety and building maintenance, because it's just fascinating that the stories you tell are identical to the stories that we tell. It doesn't matter what you're doing with your hands. It's like the mentality of working and doing a good job and wanting to further the business. It's the same no matter where you are.
And that's go ahead, Cody.
No, I'm jumping into open dialogue, but it just, then it falls into even the kind of things. John D. Rockefeller, he was kind of coined with this. I don't know who actually said it. He was the one that coined with it, but the man who can manage 100 can't manage 1,000. The man who can manage 1,000 can't manage 100, but you have to have both.
Mm-hmm.
And it's so critical because, we've got people in our organization that are the checklist people. I can't stand them. They drive me nuts, but you have to have them. You got to have those. And, but like you were saying, having that, hey, own it. If even the ones with the checklist mentality, when you go to talk to them about about their checklist, if I come to talk to you about your checklist and you don't light up and get excited about your checklist, I've got you in the wrong role. If you say I have to go to work, you don't need to be here. You just have things you don't get up on Saturday morning and say, oh, I have to brush my teeth and mow my yard. No, those are just things that you're doing throughout the day. So for us, it's part of your life. It's just, hey, these are things I got to do today. Mm-hmm. And that's, I agree with what you're saying. It just, I think we've just really missed the mark on, everybody gets so caught up in trying to be philosophical and psychological on the new generations of people coming in to the workforce and the layers of generations. And there's so much bullcorn that, oh, I've got to manage these people different and I've got to try to work with them and no, you don't. Stop it. That just means you're fake. Nobody likes fake people. Stop it. Don't do that.
Well, hold on a second, Cody. Tim, you brought up a great point about bringing different leaders from different perspectives together. I mean, that's why these symposiums exist, is that I want to bring these people from different backgrounds together, because if we're all with just tech people, or we're all with just safety people, or we're all with just construction people or manufacturing, whatever industry we're in, we lose out on the perspectives of other people in different industries. But two, Cody, you bring up this interesting point. I'm a big believer in radical accountability, and I believe that at the end of the day, the buck stops at the top. And part of that, it means that we have people with different personalities, people with different love languages, people that reciprocate with different things. And I think as the leader, and I'd be curious to learn your guys' thoughts on this, but I think as the leader, we have to cater our leadership style and communication style to what drives that person. So for you, Cody, it's touch, but maybe we've got some team members that's maybe not what it is. Maybe it's words of affirmation. Maybe it's compensation. Maybe it's gifts. I don't know. But if people are having to iterate themselves to us, we are less likely to be efficient than if we as the leaders can iterate ourselves to the people around us. But I'd be curious to learn what your guys' thoughts are on that.
I can tell you why I think it's a terrible idea. But
okay, tell me why.
You guys go ahead.
Don, yeah, I'll actually go back a couple of paragraphs to build on what Cody said. There's two kinds of people. There's employers and employees. There's a PhD out of Stanford that wrote a book called Mindset. And she said there's two kinds of people. There's growth mindset and then there's fixed mindset, right? So the trick is how to find those growth mindset people, how to find those eagles that soar and think and are proactive, as opposed to the people that just do what they're told. And only 1 out of 10 is an eagle. And it's hard to find. And that 10% number has been true for the 6,000 years of civilization. The ones that go above and beyond, the one that think beyond what the normal boundaries of the job are, and that care about doing a good job.
it is hard to find sometimes. And
Most of them are in our position.
yeah, I've had conversation with people about leadership, and sometimes leaders are just the guys that pick off the guys that are there that are not perfectly fitting within that position. And I've seen it happen. And so when I come back to my environment and say, if you're telling me you got a guy that's just not exactly fitting within what it is you want to do, leaders don't chunk people. Leaders make people that they have better in whatever way that they possibly can. And so, there are cases where it just doesn't work, or the decisions are made, from either side that, people, they leave that position. But, what I try to teach the guys that work with me, that I'm saying, hey, this is now, you own this. And by the way, there's another guy. Now you've got too much work. There's another guy there. You're going to have to back away a little bit from the work and start explaining exactly why it is we're doing this, how we do it. That grows the leadership base within the company. And at some point, I'm not going to be here. The company was here before I got here. It'll be here when I leave. I would rather leave it in a better position. So, getting people to be motivated is, in some cases, it's just not possible, right? We've all run into those guys. What I'm seeing though, I'm taking people right out of college. One of the questions about, how do you grow and innovation, taking people right out of college and showing them things that they've never seen before, places where they can actually make a difference. And then in our business, we're in the technology space, right? So there's no government standard or corporate standard that says this person working on this system must have this amount of training. So I always equate it to a plumber. I'll say, think about a plumber coming to your house. Before that guy can put a wrench onto a pipe fitting in your house, he's got to have about 2,000 hours of on-site experience. You're coming out of college working on a Fortune 100 company's database system, and you have no experience. So I got to make sure you have that healthy fear of doing something wrong, so that you check, you say measure twice, cut once. Here in this business, measure 200 times, cut once, right? And when you give them that feeling of how important it is what they're doing, they get it really quickly, right? And those guys that don't really want that, they'll take off. You give them that kind of experience and that ownership of something that's that important, it really seems to work.
Let's talk about the interview process then for a second, because Tim, Cody, and Don, y'all have brought up this point of hiring people that are growth oriented. I think in theory, it sounds awesome. Like if everyone could have a stamp on their forehead that says I'm growth oriented, that would be awesome. I would love to, it would make it a whole lot easier to hire the right people. But sometimes in the interview process, people who do really well in interviews aren't always the right people in the roles. How do you go about identifying who is a person that's a growth mindset that aligns with your strengths? I mean, Tim, you kind of mentioned I put you through some different scenarios and people kind of quickly wean themselves in or wean themselves out. Jump in and share how do you go about identifying those right people to join the team, and really how do you go about reevaluating over time if those people are still the right people on the team? Does that question make sense?
Yeah, and one of the things I don't want to miss, because we've been talking about it and you just brought it up, Gary, but I don't want to miss this. You got to have both. You got to have the growth mindset and then the checklist mindset. You got to have both. And it's about putting them where they belong. And, Tim said something that, man, it just resonates, because my favorite thing in the world to do is fire people. My favorite thing to do. And people, they laugh at that, but here's why. When we hire somebody, we try to identify the growth mindset. Where are you going to sit? Because we got to have the check the box people. You got to have that. But for me, we have a program after our organization. So if I let somebody go because they're not cutting it, I failed. They didn't fail. I failed. I put them in the wrong role. It wasn't them. When we hired them, we misjudged them and did them wrong. So we always, as often as we can, we transfer them to either another company that we've got. We got a client or a friend of mine that owns a business, and I've got a perfect guy because we have great attitudes. We don't hire bad attitudes, but we might have them in the wrong aptitude. We may have them sitting somewhere they can't learn. It's not what they enjoy. So making sure that you do that. But then if you have something that doesn't work, what are you going to do with those people? Because you failed them. They didn't fail you. And you brought up also about the catering to everybody, and we went off on that, and I said I just profusely disagree with that, because every employer has a default, and everybody on this call, and everybody I would venture to believe from a business perspective that's going to watch this, we have those freak out, flip out moments where poop hits the fan and we lose our minds. We all have it. It looks different. I'm a flash fire, and my entire team will tell you I will flip out for about 10 minutes. Don't stay away. And then 15 minutes later, I don't even know what you're talking about. I know it's a poor characteristic, but it is a characteristic nonetheless, and that's my default. And so when that happens, if your love language is words of affirmation, you might not come to work the next day. I can't have that, because what the things that just came out of my mouth that I try to work on for me, but everybody has their default. It doesn't matter who you are, those things. And so if words mean the world to you, and I say a lot of, my daughter works for me. And so if there's other people in the office and I lose my poop on my daughter, the words I say are going to be very different to my child than they are to an employee. You know what I mean? But they're going to hear that same conversation, and I'm going to be a whole lot harder on her. And so if those words have that much meaning in your life, this is a bad fit, because one of the things that I want for my organizations, we need to be able to be free to say things, be really good at crucial conversations. But you know how you get good at crucial conversations? You practice. And so you're going to say things that, like, oh man, why did I use that word? That wasn't the right. I should have said this. And if you've got people that are words of affirmation and words hurt them, their organizations they shouldn't be in. So if you as a leader, if you have a freak out moment, you flip out for whatever, something went totally south, company just got cut by 50% in one day, and you freak out, the last thing you want to do is lose 4 people on your team because of that.
Yeah.
So, you pick any one of the 5 love languages, it's the same thing. And if you can operate as a leader in your default, it doesn't work. But you have a primary and a secondary default. So whenever you hire your layers and you have your other team, so my leadership team, they're all physical affection, all of them. Their secondary is based on what they do. So our accounting, I don't know that I would ever hang out with an accountant on the weekend and barbecue with them. I don't know that I would. We just have different personality types. I don't know that I would. We got some really cool people, but our conversation, I like to rodeo. They don't. And so the conversations are different. Love them to death. I love visiting with them in the office and all that, but their languages and the way they operate and what makes a great engineer is very different than what makes a great pro boxer. And so those conversations are very, very, very different. And you have to know that. So what my next layer, their secondary love language, is what that team needs. And predictive index, and I don't want to keep throwing them out there, but man, they just do such a fantastic job at identifying that stuff. So that's just really, really important, because if you got a way to make sure that the people that you put in the wrong position, you got a place to put them, whether it's in your organization or in somebody else's. There's a letter that I have framed somewhere in here of a guy who resigned, and I loved that kid. And I put him in the wrong position, and it was the resignation that hurt me the most. And I framed his resignation letter, still talk to him all the time. But I failed.
What are your thoughts on that, Tim and Don?
I've had those same situations, that whenever someone walks into my office and says, "Hey, can I talk to you for a minute?" I know what's coming, you know. And I have those situations where I say, first and foremost, you got to look out for your number one, right? Look out for yourself. And I would never try to stop you from doing that, especially if you can grow into another position. And if it's not here, then I was successful. If you're going to another job where you're going to take on more responsibility, kind of things you were doing here, but bigger than where you were here, I'm happy, right? I'll fill that spot again. I hate to lose you, you know, but I'll fill that spot again. So there's kind of it's kind of a two-way street. Like I grew that guy too good, you know. I'm happy about that. I'm happy that he goes off and ends up running another business, you know, like this. On the other side of it too, yeah, you hate to put somebody in the wrong position, and especially if you really don't have anywhere to put them, you know, on the other side of that. If I can't help somebody go to the next position outside of here, that's really the part that I feel is most failing on my side, is that we all know other people in the same business. I now know Don. Don now knows me, right? We're in the same business, basically, in the technology space. You know, that might be a place where we have employees that bounce back and forth. So I did want to say one other thing too. When we were a much smaller group, I actually worked for Accenture before, but I was in a much smaller group within that. When we hired people, I would make 4 or 5 of my team members take this interviewee to lunch. And when they came back, I'd say, "Can you work with that guy or girl? If you can't, you better tell me now." Because if you don't tell me now and you tell me 2 weeks from now, I'm going to say, "Hey, you had your chance." You know, if there was something that popped out in a regular conversation just with another guy, right? Hopefully you would be able to understand that if this is a guy you want to work with, yeah, we can teach him what we need to know. In most cases, if you can read, you can do what we do. Right? But if it's a personality conflict that you see right off the bat, and those are tough to see. I mean, I think Cody's done probably a better job at that, maybe making it more of a science than an art, than maybe some of the others of us have. But if you see that up front, and you know you're not gonna gel with the team that's here, then you're probably gonna want to steer a different direction.
Yeah, so the hiring risk as a leader is one of the biggest risks that I take, right? And Tim, I admire how you take the time for 5 people to take the candidate out to lunch, because when sometimes I make decisions with my gut and it's the wrong decision because I've skipped some steps. Oh, so and so was out of the office, and so was his colleague. And goodness, when I skip those steps, and then I've got to let somebody go, or even worse, they cause a problem, either internally in the organization or worse, externally with a customer.
Yeah.
I worked for a guy that you knew well, that he was a huge retailer, and he signed a letter that was supposed to he forged a customer signature for a Visa approval. Goodness, so that cost us a huge customer, and it cost us a team of, I think, 12. Ouch, that really, really hurts. You expect honesty, and if you ask anybody, "Hey, are you honest?" Everybody says, "Oh yeah, I'm as honest as the day is long." Well, can you give me an answer of ethics, and what's the toughest ethics challenge you've ever faced? The answer to that question is so important.
Yeah,
because the people who don't know what ethics is won't be able to tell you a story, in spite of them swearing that, "Oh yes, I am totally honest." Hogwash.
yeah, it's tough, and when you're a team of 50, it's a whole lot easier. When you get to 500, it's tougher. 5,000, 50,000, you might not have the time to take everybody you need on the team to lunch. And we're kind of getting at that point now, where you've got a proposal that you've won, and you've got to staff it, and got some team members that you're going to use. You got to add some more. Sometimes you have time, sometimes you don't. I can only imagine Cody.
So I got a question for you, Tim, just out of sheer curiosity.
Yeah.
So let's say you pick up a project,
and it needs 10 people for this project, and you don't have them. You're a company of 50.
Yep.
You don't have 10 people.
Yep.
It's going to take you 6 weeks to find, vet, hire, sift, attrition to get 10 people. I mean, you're looking at 6 to 12 weeks to find the right 10 people at best. And that's at best. Then you got the training curve, the learning curve, the culture curve, all the other stuff. What keeps you from finding a company that does what you do and outsourcing to them?
Nothing. So depending on the business or the particular project or the needs of the customer, the time frame, we do both. So just like you, we partner with certain companies. Certain companies call me in those cases, right? So it's reciprocal. If I need 2 guys and it's a 3-year project, I'll probably hire those guys. If I need 10 guys and it's a 6-month project, I'm going to outsource it. So there's a lot of factors that you use to make those decisions.
Yeah, one of the things that for me, what we're just outsourcing piece, a lot of people are scared of that. And if I got to hire 10 people, my margin is enough to where I just need really to hire 1.
Mm-hmm.
The only job is to manage the message. So if something's being presented or delivered that is deliverable going out, your only job is to proof it. Make sure it's right. Make sure the aesthetics are right. The logos are right. Does it fit the style guide? Are we going with their name? Are we going with our name? Manage what's coming from behind the curtain to in front of the curtain.
Mm-hmm.
Then that's your only role.
Yeah, I mean, everybody, in your business, just like in ours, you've probably gone through a few companies that you'd work with again, and maybe some that you wouldn't. And we have that same thing, and certainly, we like to pride ourselves on being one that everybody always comes back to, right? That's your goal. I want to be the guy that everybody says, if you've got this going on, you go to InfoLab, talk to Tim Fox. That's a lofty goal, and if you hit it all the time, right? The coin never flips heads times in a row, right? There's always going to be times where things don't work out exactly the way you want it to. But when you have that goal in mind, it's easier to repeat that process. Got to have the right people, got to have the right processes, got to have the right understanding of the teams that are doing the work. That's how some businesses survive 100% on waiting for Cody or me to call them to outsource that work, right? And it's a totally different business model than the way that we run our business. And I'm sure that Don and at a company size of 5,000 consultants, right? They can do different types of jobs where they may need 50 at a time. And I come from the Big Four where we had 300,000 employees and we were still outsourcing. So, it's a very dynamic, very interesting business. And sometimes it's just the location and the time that this project has to happen will dictate what you do. I would be interested to hear from your perspective.
Because you said on your thing, the goal is to have some disagreement on the panel.
No, this is great. I was going to say,
but we haven't found a disagreement yet.
Well, I think we found some interesting points even within this. Like, this has been such a fascinating panel. I've really enjoyed doing this with you guys. And by the way, for anybody watching this, if y'all want to meet these 3 great gentlemen, Tim, Cody, and Don, come to our executive symposium on December 7th, 5 to 8 p.m. We're hosting it in the Dallas-Fort Worth area. We'd love to see y'all there. But yeah, this has been great. I think this was a very interesting and enlightening conversation, just in a lot of just how do we go about pivoting, how do we go about identifying new opportunities, and how do we grow people within all of that. And I really liked all of your perspectives. I thought this was great. Guys, thanks for your time. Thanks for being here. Everybody, thanks for watching. Have a great rest of your day.